So you want to learn music? What the shit is my hair? Well, you've come to the right place. I didn't think about this intro more than 5 seconds, so I'm gonna just wing it. I started learning guitar a while ago. My pen nearly fell off. One of the many things that I struggled with at an early phase was understanding chords. I'd like look up this famous song and be like, oh yeah, I know how to play a C, I know how to play a G. What the shit is an F major 7 flat 5? Why is there a B after the 7 and what is a 7 and a 5? What's going on? Well, today I'm gonna give you the simplest guide to understanding these chords. Now, before we start, I'm gonna explain what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna briefly mention the tones in between the notes, what that means. I'm gonna briefly mention what a root is, because if you don't understand what a 1, 3, 5 is, then you can't understand the rest of the video. And then I'm gonna cover the rest of the chords. The chords we're gonna cover today are the major and minor chords, the Sus2 and Sus4 chords, the augmented and diminished chords, the 7 chord, and I won't talk about the 6, 9, and 11 chords because there's just too much going on there. The video becomes very cumbered, and you don't really come across those as much as you come across a 7 or a major chord anyway. Start about the tones. What you need to understand, there's nothing here to explain. Between every single note is a single tone, a distance. Think about it as numbers, measuring the distance between the notes. But let's explain it this way. I'm gonna pop a keyboard right now, a piano keyboard on the screen. The piano keyboard has a black note in between every other white key, right? That means that there's an extra distance. We're gonna call that a full tone. But as you can see, there are a few keys that are just touching. There is no black note between them. Well, those notes are the B and the C, who are distanced by a half tone, and the E and the F, who are also distanced by a half tone. So, recap, every single note is distanced by a full tone except the B and the C and the E and the F. Now that we got that out of the way, we're gonna talk about the roots. Essentially, to find the root of any chord, take a look at the literal first letter. There's nothing to explain there, honestly. Any complex chord, no matter what it is, it could be a B, sus, 2, flat, 5, 7 or whatever. This isn't a chord, but I'm just making up random numbers. Well, the root is just B. If the chord is like C minor, well, the root is just C. If the chord is A flat 7 or whatever, well, the chord is just A flat. Whatever that first note is, with the flat and the sharp that accompany just that note, that's literally your root. And from there, you start counting your 1, 3, 5. What that means is, let's take the example of the A minor chord, one of the more commonly used chords in any piece of music. Well, the root of that is A, as we've established. We'll call that a 1, because we're starting to count from 1. A lot of this is just counting. Then we gotta find our 3 and our 5. Our 3 and our 5 are literally just counting from our 1. You go 1, 2, 3, and then 3, 4, 5. You know, math. In this case, A, B, C. Seeing how easy this is? And then C, D, E. 5. It's as easy as that. So counting your 1, 3, 5 is literally just finding your 1, your root, and then counting, literally just counting from there. It's as simple as that. You're just counting 1, 3, 5. So now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about our chords. We're gonna start with the minor and major chord. Now, a lot of this can be explained by talking about intervals, but I won't talk about intervals in this video. If you wanna know what an interval is, it's literally just the distance in between a bigger group of notes. So we talked about the distance between two notes and have it one tone or a half tone. But intervals are like the distance between 3 notes or 4 notes or 5 notes. We're not gonna go into that in this video. The video will become too heavy to understand. So you can just Google it and understand. But literally everything that I'm gonna talk about can be explained by knowing that you just memorize the intervals, which is why it is the way that it is. We're literally just gonna talk about the 1, 3, 5 this entire video, I'm noticing. With the minor and major chord, the distance between the 1 and the 5 is always, no matter what, gonna be 3.5. No matter what you do, it's gonna be a distance of 3.5. Well, how do you know if it's a minor or if it's a major chord? Well, you see the distance between the 1 and the 3 first. The distances between the 1 and the 3 and the 3 and 5 are always going to be 2 and 1.5 distributed one of each way. What I mean by it is this. If it's a major chord, it's bigger, it's major, it's more important, let's say, just, you know, for the sake of understanding. That means we start off with the bigger number, which is 2, which leaves us with the 1.5. My handwriting is horrible. That's the way that you understand major and minor chords. If it's a minor chord, you switch it around. If it's a minor chord, that means you have a 1.5 and then a 2. Let's explain it this way. Let's take the A minor and A major chord, right? We briefly mentioned before that the A minor chord is A, C, and E. That's the A minor, right? A, C, E. That is for the A minor. Okay? The distance between the A and the C is A going to B going to C. The distance between A and B is 1 tone. We've mentioned this before. But B and the C are one of the exceptions in which the distance is a half tone. So over here, you have 1.5 tones. The distance between the C and the E is as follows. Between the C and the E, there's a D. 1 tone, as mentioned before. Between the D and the E, another 1 tone. There's no exception here. So overall, over here, you got 2 tones. So you got 1.5 between the 1 and the 3, and 2 between the 3 and the 5. If I wanted this to be an A major chord, well then what would I do? Well, it's as simple as adding a sharp. A sharp and a flat essentially add or subtract a half tone to your note. So let's say you have a B. If you make it a B flat, it's not exactly an A, it's in between the A and the B, because before the B is an A. If you take an F, right, and make it an F sharp, it's not a G, it's like in between the F and the G. So to make the A minor an A major, an A minor has a 1.5 and a 2, right? We've talked about this. To make it a major, then that 1.5 needs to become a 2, and that 2 needs to become a 1.5. To do that, what I do is I take that A, C, and E, and I quite simply add a sharp to the C. Because what that does is increases the distance between the C and the A by just a half tone, and it decreases that distance between the E and the C sharp and the D and the C by just a half tone. What that means is, here we have a D and here we have a B. Between the A and the B is 1 tone, nothing's changed there. Between the A and the C sharp, there's a C, then a C sharp. Here you have a half tone, and from the C to the C sharp, you literally added a half tone. So here we have 1.5 and then a half, means you have 2. Between the C sharp and the D is just a half tone, because you increase that distance, you decrease that distance by just that half. And the D and the E is just 1 tone, so you have 1.5. It's as simple as memorizing the distance between the 1, 3, 5. So to recap, if you have a major chord, then the distance between the 1 and the 3 is a 2. And if it's a minor chord, the distance between the 1 and the 3 is 1.5. Moving on to the sus chords. Now sus chords literally just fuck around with the 3. What that means is as follows. We were talking about the 1, 3, and 5 earlier. Well, sus chords literally go, hey, fuck that 3, we're gonna add another note. Sus2 means that they add the 2, and sus4 means that they add the 4. It's nothing beyond that. Next, we're gonna move to the augmented and the diminished.
Hindsight's 2020. We're not going to talk about augmented and diminished chords after all. The explanation took a little bit too much time and it's a bit too complex for the simplicity of this video. The general gist is a diminished chord has a flat 5th note and the augmented chord has a sharp 5th note. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the general gist. Alright, back to the video.
Next, let's move on to our final thing and the most chunky version of this. The 7 chords. Now, it is important to distinguish a few things with the 7. In the realm of the 7s, there's the 7 chord, and then there's the dominant 7 chord. There's the normal 7, and then there's the 7 that just is a piece of fucking shit, generally speaking. This again deals with intervals. So we're not gonna talk about the 1, 3, 5 this time, because the thing about the 7 chord is you're just taking that 1, 3, and 5 we discussed about earlier, and you're just adding a 7 to it. At its base, you're just adding an extra note, right? Simple enough, sort of. Let's take the A minor chord again, right? So we got A, we got C, and we got E. That's our 1, 3, 5. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So G is our 7th chord, or 7th note, I should say. So you add that G. Because of intervals. There's an interval that is just for this chord, for the 7 chords, that says if it's going to be a 7 chord, a normal 7 chord, then the distance between the 1 and the 7 has to be 5.5. Okay? And if the distance between the 1 and the 5 is always 3.5, that means the distance between the 5 and the 7 has to be, you guessed it, 2. In this case, between the E and the G is an F, and here we know the case is 1.5, which fucks around because this is 1, meaning this is 1.5. So in order to make the distance between the E and the G 2 and not 1.5, we just make the G sharp. So A minor 7 is taking that A, C, E and adding a G sharp. Simple as that. We want the distance between the 1 and the 7 to be 5.5. That is the rule we're going off of here. That is a normal chord. That is a normal 7 chord. There is another chord. And an easier way to find out about this and to know whether or not if it's a minor, if it's just a normal 7 chord, you go from the 7 to the 1. And if the distance between the 7 and the 1 is just half a tone, that means you got a normal 7 chord. In this case, the distance between the G and an A going backwards, or sorry, from the A to the G sharp going backwards is half a tone. Because the distance between the A and a G going backwards is just 1 tone. From G to A is 1 tone, like we discussed, every other note. But because we made it a G sharp, that 1 tone becomes half a tone, which means it's a normal 7 chord. That's a quick little tip. Now, what about the dominant 7? Well, the dominant 7 essentially is like, hey, you know that interval we talked about later? Fuck it, I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna make the distance between the 1 and the 7 a 5. Essentially, the dominant 7 goes like, hey, you have your 1, 3, 5, 7. Well, I'm gonna make that 7 a flat. Just that, literally that. To give you a better example about that, let's take our A minor. Our A minor is A, C, E. Now, we have 2 ways to go from here. Dominant 7 or just regular old 7. If you want a regular old 7, like we discussed before, you go G sharp. Dominant 7 goes like, hey, fuck your regular 7. Excuse me, I'm gonna make it flat. So that G sharp becomes a G sharp that's just flat. Cancels out each other. It's like doing +1 - 1 to an equation which is endlessly long. It's nothing. So meaning you end up at the end with a G. Again, the easy way to go about this is taking your 7 and seeing the distance between that 7 and the 1. So the distance between the G and the A is 1 tone, which means it's a dominant 7. Think about it this way, when you're doing this little hack, okay? Counting from like the 7 to the 1 to find out if it's a dominant 7 or it's a normal 7. Think about it this way, dominant 7 asserts alpha energy, right? Hiya! So if you're going from the 7 to the 1, it has to be extra, so that means it's a 1 tone. Meanwhile, a normal 7 is more mellow, it's chill, it's fine, it's cool, so it's a half tone. There are a lot of ways you can count that, but think about it this way. The correct technical way is thinking about the proper interval is 5.5 tones between the 1 and the 7. If it's just 5 tones, then you got yourself a dominant 7. You're never gonna get a hold of this just by one glance. It's gonna take a little bit of time. You're gonna be slow at it at first, and then progressively you're gonna get faster. And my power just went out. This is convenient. Anyway, if this video was helpful in any way, shape, or form, I'm glad. Leave a comment if you have any other question you would like to ask me, and I'll answer to as much as I can. If I made a mistake in this video, but if I made any mistake, feel free to let me know in the comments below, and I will cry in a corner as you yell at me. But anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys in the next video. I'll see you guys in the next video. Twitter, Discord, Instagram, and Twitch in the description as always, and I'll see you guys in the next video. As always, stay safe. Peace.